So, welcome everybody to UFO Experiencers. And my name is Catherine, and I'm so happy that you're all with us tonight because tonight we have the fabulous Barbara Lamb. And I was so happy to meet Barbara in 2019 at a Sasquatch family reunion. And I happened to sit down at a table to have lunch, and Barbara sat next to me, and we had the nicest talk. And I just will always remember Barbara as being such a warm, lovely person. Another thing I want to say about Barbara is she was good friends with my mentor, Dolores Cannon, she's no longer with us on the earth plane, but I know she's still around us. And she's so excited about the work that everybody is doing. And I'm so excited that Barbara's here with us, and she's going to be talking about crop circles tonight. So, Barbara, welcome. So happy that you're here with us.
Thank you. I am happy too. I've really enjoyed your group the couple of times that I've been with you. And of course, before, when I was here, we were focusing mostly on people's experiences that they'd had of an unusual nature. And very often they turned out to be encounters with extraterrestrial beings. And that has been the main part of my professional work for the last 33 years, starting in 1991. And before that, and during that, I have been a licensed psychotherapist, working with people in many different modalities. And then in 1984, I began being trained for 5 years in past life regression therapy, and I still do some of that upon request. And then in 1990, an amazing thing happened, and that is that I was at a big lecture forum called the Whole Life Expo in Los Angeles, and I saw in the program guide that there was going to be a lecture given, and it had a different look to it. In the program guide, everybody else's little blurb about their lecture had a photo of the person giving the lecture. But this is the only case I have ever seen where next to the title of the lecture, there was sort of, instead of a picture of a person giving the lecture, there was just this picture of a funny little pattern, and I didn't know what it was. And I looked at the title, and it said, Mysterious Patterns in the Fields of Britain. And I had never heard of that before, but immediately I felt this big flash of light going through me. And the thought came to my mind, oh, we're being communicated with those out there. Now, at that point in 1990, I had had nothing to do with working with people who'd had extraterrestrial contacts and really wasn't sure that there was such a thing going on. It definitely was not part of my life. But seeing that little picture about mysterious patterns happening in the fields of Britain, whoa, I just knew. Probably some of you have had that experience when something different happens and you don't know how, but that you just suddenly know. So that's how it was for me. And I went to that lecture. Luckily, it had not happened yet. And there I saw many pictures of crop circles that had happened through the year 1990 and was very intrigued with them, saw some videotapes as well. And halfway through the lecture, I found myself slapping my own thigh and saying to myself, okay, that's it. I'm going next summer, 1991. I'm going to check this out for myself, which I actually did. I went in 1991 and went on for 25 more years every year to England. That is, because that's where most of the crop circles were happening, and really got thoroughly involved in this great mystery. Even after that first year, when I went to about 7 different crop circles, each one being different from each other, and sitting in them and lying down in them, feeling the energy of them, feeling really good in them, and meeting wonderful people who also were very attracted to visiting the crop circles, and including one of the main crop circle researchers of the time, a man named Pat Delgado. And through the course of things, just exploring around, I met people who were very involved in the Center for Crop Circle Studies in England. And they invited me to come to a meeting that they were having at one of the country pubs in Wiltshire County, the good old Wagon and Horses pub. And I went to the meeting and just felt like these are my people. I just feel so in sync with them and this interest in crop circles. And into that meeting, there came a young man, and he had with him a picture of a crop circle that had just happened that day. A photo had been taken from the air of that crop circle. And the head of the group, the leader, George Wingfield, he looked at this picture and he threw his head back and he said, "Ah, this is beyond the pale," with all the fascinating, beautiful, perfect patterns that we've had in the fields as crop circles through the 1980s and 1990. He said, "But this is beyond the pale. This is extraordinary." So I'm going to show you a picture of that crop circle. And let me know if it's centered so that you can see it. Catherine, can you see that well?
Just lift it up just a tiny bit. There you go. All right. Wow.
Because the way I'm sitting, I
Yeah,
have that
that's
in front of me,
beautiful.
which means I can't see it. I can't
Yeah.
see the screen. So anyway, this particular pattern is one that drew more attention to the crop circle phenomenon than any other crop circle that has happened before or since then. There's something about it, the geometries, the perfection, the wondering what this could possibly mean. But anyway, this was interpreted in many different ways through the years by various people. But whatever it means, it has definitely attracted the attention of people to the extent that many of them have become crop circle enthusiasts or even returning researchers like myself. So that sort of started the phenomenon for me.
I've never seen that one before. That is
Oh,
really interesting.
oh, yes.
That's fascinating.
And then as the years went on and I kept going for crop circles, every single pattern since then has been somewhat different than any other pattern. Sometimes there have been a repetition of themes, like of certain spiritual symbols, for instance, or geometric patterns. But no two crop circles of the thousands that have happened since 1991. There are no two exact replicas. So whatever is this creative artistic force, it has a lot to say and a lot of different ways to say it. So we feel that these crop circles may have messages for us. And of course, we being human beings, we have a variety of way of interpreting those messages. And yet there is some agreement on the part of many people about what a particular crop circle might mean. But they all seem to be symbols of some sort. They're not just random little doodles of little scratches in the field. They're very deliberately chosen and set patterns. So I'll go into what a crop circle is. It is a pattern laid down in a big field of growing crop. And the crops are usually wheat or barley or oilseed canola. And there are also crop circles that happen in less frequently growing crops like oats and even some shorter crops and some flaxseed crops and shorter ones that may grow only 3 or 4 inches tall, might or might not have blossoms or berries on them. But usually they happen in the tall grains of crops that are usually at least 3 feet tall, often 4.5 feet tall. And at the end of the season, when the corn plants are really coming into maturity and ripening, those plants can be 12 feet tall and having very thick stalks and lots of leaves, and of course corn cobs. So it's a very substantial plant, almost like a tree, each one. And yet they can be laid down into really beautiful, precise crop circles by this mysterious force. So the location, as I had mentioned, of crop circles is in England more than any other place, and yet they do happen worldwide. And yes, indeed, they happen in this country, United States. And in the United States, they have happened in Washington State, Oregon, California, all along the northern coast where it meets Canada, and certainly in the big crop growing states, big wheat crops, for instance, in places like Kansas and Nebraska and Oklahoma and Indiana, Illinois, these wonderful, wonderful crop fields that we have too. Even crop circles have appeared on the eastern seaboard in the US too, in New Hampshire, New York State, Maine, right on down the coast, Tennessee, Kentucky, in the Middle West as well, in Iowa. In fact, by the ancient mounds in Iowa, the Serpent Mound and so forth, there are quite a number of crop circles that happen, maybe one each year, sometimes a series of crop circles. And then, of course, they appear in most of the countries of the world. And in countries where they don't grow big grain crops, sometimes there will be a pattern suddenly appearing in a big, almost deserty field with nothing growing at all. And they've also happened in big areas of gravel and sand, ice, snow. So it seems like the phenomenon will use almost any medium, that we have a natural medium that we have to leave their designs. But most of them seem to be happening in England. And everybody asks me, well, why do you think they're happening in England, particularly? And I say, well, it seems to be, as far as we can tell, that in England, there's a lot of under the soil moisture, underground moisture from geological aquifers or underground streams or rivers or even ponds or lakes. And that seems to be important for the making of a crop circle in most cases. And so there are theories about why and how crop circles are made. And one of the theories that I think makes a lot of sense, and this was promoted by a biophysicist in Michigan named Dr. Levengood. And he determined, after testing many, many plants taken from crop circles and from the fields outside of crop circles, testing to see the differences, and indeed there are a lot of differences, and testing them against man-made crop circles, because we know there are some that are made by humans. We call them hoaxed crop circles versus the genuine ones, which are made by the unknown, mysterious force. So Dr. Levengood determined that there was a great, like a circular energy plasma vortex coming down like a whirlwind in sort of a conical shape. And that had special energies coming down through the higher atmosphere, by whom we don't know. And when this vortex would touch the ground, it would draw up the moisture under the surface of the soil, creating a steam effect. And that was important because the steam effect allowed the plants to just bend right over at ground level without harming them in any way. So in these genuine crop circles, when the plants are bent over and laid down on the ground into the crop circle pattern, they keep growing and ripening and coming to full maturity. And it has also been tested many times that the seeds in the laid down genuine crop circle plants are sort of dwarfed and misshapen. So you wouldn't think that they would be valuable, but it turns out with testing against the crop circle seeds, against seeds from the same crop outside of the crop circle, from anywhere else in the field, that the seeds that were in the crop circle, even though they're dwarfed and misshapen, that they would grow substantially quicker, faster, taller, stronger, hardier, and even, according to many tests, more and more nourishing. So something positive has been happening to these plants, even though it might not look like that. So there are people who wonder, what's the difference between a man-made circle and a genuine crop circle? Well, as I was just saying, in the genuine ones, the plants are bent over and they continue to grow because they've not been harmed. They're not broken where they're bent over at ground level. But with the hoaxed ones, they definitely are, the plants are harmed because they're stamped down by big boards, usually with a rope or a chain coming around the person's neck, walking along, stomping down the plants, making a crop circle that way, or even with a garden roller in some cases. But anyway, those plants get broken as they come out of the ground where they're bent over by force. And so those plants die. All the plants in a hoaxed crop circle are dead. And so they don't grow, of course, and ripen and come to full maturity. And they also don't have energy. Now, with the genuine crop circles, there is definitely measurable energy in those crop circles, and there is no energy at all in the man-made ones. So that's something we tell really quickly when we're actually there in these crop circles. And with the genuine ones, the energy can be measured in various ways. And indeed, with so many of the crop circles, they have been measured. And that means that people can go in with an electrostatic voltmeter or a magnetometer or a microwave detector. And others like me and some of my friends, we would go into crop circles with dowsing rods or pendulums. I always preferred using my pair of dowsing rods. So when I would be walking through the tractor track of a field to get to a crop circle, I would be holding my dowsing rods out in front of me, and they would be parallel. And then as soon as I would step into a genuine crop circle, they'd open up. And when I would go into the most energized part, which was usually a swirled center, they would open up even more. Now let's compare that with my going into a hoaxed, a man-made crop circle. Go along the tractor track to get to the crop circle. My dowsing rods would be out straight, and when I'd step into the crop circle, they would not move at all. And no matter where I went in that crop circle, those dowsing rods did not move. In other words, they were showing that there is no extra energy in the man-made crop circle compared to lots of energy in the genuine crop circles. The season, by the way, for seeing crop circles is, of course, when the crops are growing and are tall enough to make it worthwhile to have a crop circle in it. So in other words, the season for crop circles usually starts in May and continues through June as the plants are getting even taller and older, and July and August. And very often the harvesting happens in England by the English farmers long around the middle of July. So usually, August, sorry. So by the end of August, usually there are no more crops remaining for crop circles to happen in, except for the corn crop. They call it maize, but we call it corn. And as I said, those corn crops can grow 12 feet tall or even more, and very hardy and sturdy and lots of leaves and the corn cobs. And yet they too can be laid over and swirled into beautiful, perfect patterns, perfect straight edges or curved edges. And they're masterful. It's just very hard to understand how that can happen in any plants, but especially the corn plants. So I think I've covered some of the basics, and you can ask questions later if you want to. I'd like to go on and show you some more pictures. I showed you that one that really started the whole phenomenon going. And then we could just see that there was a combination, some more complex patterns that happened. This one in the 1990s, this one represents a torus of energy. And it just happened that the weekend that this crop circle came down, there was a crop circle conference going on in Glastonbury, England. And that was about a 2.5 hour drive away from where this crop circle happened. So during that day, Saturday, I think it was, at the conference, a physicist named Jim Lyons was giving a lecture about energy, and he showed a diagram of the torus, the toroidal energy, the way that energy basically moves, and making a big point about that. I had never heard of that before, so I paid particular attention. And then that very night, 2.5 hours drive away in Wiltshire County, this particular toroidal pattern showed up in a field. So this made us begin to think, wow, is that interesting? That somebody here on Earth was talking publicly about that whole concept and showing a diagram of toroidal energy. And that very night, a few hours later, that pattern was made in a field. So some of us began to think, wait a minute now. There seems to be something going on that our thoughts or what we're doing here seems to be noticed and seems to be responded to from out there somewhere. And so that was really an intriguing thought. I want to show you another one of that type. It's even more complex. This one.
Wow.
Now look at all those little perfect shapes. And that
Amazing.
means that the shapes that you see in the sort of tan color are the tops of the standing crops. So it means that those shapes were made by all the stalks laid down in between. So that's a lot of artistic work done. And
Wow.
by the way, it's been sort of timed of the making of some of these crop circles, and they only take several seconds, even with something as complex as this. I mean, how amazing is that? So the mysteries go on and on. And then sometimes we've had patterns that are very, very long, maybe a few 100 feet long, and we call those pictograms. And in 1999,
Mm.
there was this one in Wiltshire County, England, and it was 1,200 feet long. And this crop circle was full of very strong energy. And the next morning, after this crop circle had been discovered, there was a man and woman who took their dog to go into this crop circle. The dog ran in one end of it and immediately turned around, right around and ran full tilt back out again because the energy was so strong. So this design, you see, has several, well, many different components. And it was made at about 2 o'clock in the morning one night. The woman who ran the bed and breakfast, which I stayed in, she happened to be out that night
Uh,
picking up,
Can you raise it a little higher? There you
okay,
go. Okay.
yeah, picking up son at a railroad station a few miles away. And when she drove back past this field on the way home, 2 o'clock or maybe 2:15 or 2:20 in the morning, suddenly she realized that all the church bells in the whole area, in the village nearby, and other towns further away, all the church bells were suddenly ringing.
Hmm.
She thought it was very strange. She never had known that to happen before in the middle of the night like that. And that was just when this crop circle was being laid down. And other people had noticed because they woke up with the church bell ringing and looked out their windows. If they were anywhere near that field at all, they noticed that there was a red light, like a ball of light, flying low over that field. And then in the next morning, they realized that's the area of the field that this crop circle was laid down in. So that one really amazed us. And about 40 feet away from this crop circle was another one that was about 800 feet long, a different pattern, completely different pattern, but a very nice long pattern as well. So we're going to go on now. Now I'm going to introduce another whole aspect, which is the communication that we think goes on between us and whoever is making the crop circle patterns. And we began to realize this, especially with this one happening in 1999. And what happened is that there was a group of Japanese visitors who had come to that area of Wiltshire County, England, and they were sitting up on top of an ancient man-made hill, looking like a conical pyramid, a hill called Silbury Hill. And up on the top of the hill in the afternoon, they were just sitting there and meditating. This group of people, about 10 Japanese visitors, and they said to their leader, wouldn't it be nice to have a pattern of the Japanese culture? And they decided to meditate and all asked for the making of a crop circle that would be representing the Japanese culture. And that very night, this crop circle appeared, and we have interpreted it as a representation of Japanese origami. So the Japanese group was absolutely thrilled, and so were the rest of us who heard about this. And then the Japanese, a couple of days later, decided to try it again. So they sat in some nice open country place and they meditated and asked for the makers of the crop circles, whoever or whatever they are, to give them another symbol of the crop circles. And that night, they did that too. There was another pattern that appeared, which I will show you. Tell me if it's not centered correctly.
Yep, a little
This,
higher, and then it looks good. Oh, a little bit higher. There you go. All righty, we can see it.
yeah, thank you. And this is another pattern representing the Japanese culture. Before I heard about that meditation and that request, I thought, oh, this is dolphins. Dolphins playing, that the dolphins in our oceans are being honored. And it may mean that, or it may mean the Japanese culture as well. So that got some of us really, really thinking about communicating with the genuine circle makers. I mean, what an exciting idea. And so with friends here and there, we would decide on a certain pattern and we'd sit and meditate. Sometimes we'd hold hands, sometimes not. and ask for a particular pattern. And sometimes we would draw the pattern on a napkin, like if we were in a restaurant, or a piece of paper, whatever. And sometimes we would just picture it. And lo and behold, every time we did that, that night, that pattern would be made. And then in those years too, during the late 1990s and through the 2000s, I was leading crop circle tour groups. And when I mentioned this idea, each time I led one of the tour groups, just one group per summer, usually there'd be quite a few people in the group who'd say, "Oh, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's ask for one and see if we'll be responded to." And so we would all decide as a group. Sometimes the groups had 13 people, sometimes 18 or 19 people in them. And no matter what the size, uh, we would draw a picture and then all close our eyes and meditate on it together at the same time. And then that night, that pattern would appear, very definitely recognizable as the same pattern that we had asked for. So this certainly reinforced in me that there seems to be some sort of interactive mental link between us humans and those, or whatever that intelligence is, that makes the crop circles. I think a pretty exciting idea, to me anyway, that there's communication going on telepathically, remote viewing, whatever. I don't know how it happens, but it does happen. And that's part of the wonderful crop circle mystery. So we're going to go on now, and I'm going to show you something that really had great importance and is not particularly known, I think, and particularly talked about. And that is in 1994, what was actually happening out in space was that the Shoemaker-Levy comet, which we called it, the Shoemaker-Levy comet, was hurtling across space, heading toward Jupiter with 21 pieces in the comet, one following the other. And then when that comet actually hit Jupiter, and we have photos from our big telescopes of that, and the contact place, which is sort of a series of rings and sort of crescent shapes, and that appeared as a crop circle, exactly the same pattern as the impact site on Jupiter. But before that happened, there was this pattern on a field right there in Wiltshire County on a main road where everyone could see it. Beautiful field of wheat. And this was the first one in a whole series. Now you can see that there's sort of a head of the pattern and then circles following it, representing the Shoemaker-Levy comet heading toward Jupiter. And there were 21 pieces in the tail of this pattern because the Shoemaker-Levy comet had 21 pieces following the main one that first collided with Jupiter. So each time, like every few days, each time another piece of the Shoemaker-Levy comet collided with Jupiter, another pattern of this type with a somewhat different head, should we say, and one fewer circles in its tail. So that kept happening over and over as each piece in the sky actually hit Jupiter. we would have another crop circle that corresponded with that, with a different head and one fewer circles in its tail, until it all got completed by about August 11th. And then there was a crop circle, which I don't have a picture I can show you right now, of a bunch of circles forming a circle and then a ring around it, I think, suggesting that, okay, that whole phenomenon about the comet hitting Jupiter is completed now, that it is wrapped up. So that was an amazing thing. I was there while all of that was going on, and we'd see in the local newspapers these photos of another piece hitting Jupiter and of the comet, and there it was reflected in the fields of England too, in different counties, not all in the same place. So that was an unusual phenomenon. And by that time, we had recognized too that we were being shown a lot of symbols that represented different aspects of astronomy, different symbols that were showing sun cycles and moon cycles, even over vast multi thousands of years, these cycles that have been recorded, and those were being symbolized in certain crop circles in the field. So now I want to show you something wonderful, the beginning of fractal geometry. And fractal geometry is not anything that I had ever been aware of, even having taken geometry in 7th and 8th grade, because I had to, not because I was interested in it. But anyway, in 1996, suddenly, in the middle of the day, this pattern appeared, and people recognized it as the Julia set of fractal geometry. Julia apparently was a geometer who lived in Germany, and he brought public awareness of the Julia set fractal geometry. And this crop circle happened late one afternoon instead of in the middle of the night, as most of them do. And we know it happened then because there was a pilot of a small individual plane who flew over this particular area, which happened to be near Stonehenge. And late one afternoon, he was taking a man over to Andover and dropped off the man and flew back over the same route exactly, and noticed that there was a whole line of cars parked on the highway right there, and many people, and that there was a new crop circle. It was this one. So this crop circle appeared sometime during that 35-minute of time in full daylight. So this crop circle across the road from Stonehenge, and at a distance, but you can see the Stonehenge in the distance in certain photos. Anyway, I went into this and noticed that each circle in this whole pattern, each circle had been swirled a bit differently, and there was a different kind of center left in each circle. And as you can see, there are a lot of circles. So that's a lot of differences too. And of course, this crop circle had loads of really good energy. It attracted many people from all over England, and it attracted people from some of the European countries who saw photos of it in their newspapers. And it started a whole trend, a whole series of crop circles that were fractal patterns. So about 10 days later, in another field, about 45 minutes away from where that one was near Stonehenge, there appeared this crop circle. Is it centered okay?
Yeah.
All right. So this one is fractal geometry also. It's a triple Julia fractal geometry. And of course, it goes in the reverse direction. But what a beautiful pattern this is. And I visited that one too for hours, as did many other people. And each circle was swirled a little bit differently and had a different kind of center. One of the centers looked like a little stand-up pyramid, perfect pyramidal shape, formed in the wheat at the center of that one circle. Anyway, when you're in crop circles and you see these amazing patterns and you feel the astonishing energies and so much feeling of well-being and healthiness and goodness, it's just very, very thrilling. I certainly can appreciate that I got so involved in it. So then we were wondering, when the year 2008 came along, we were wondering if we might possibly be fortunate enough to have a pattern with 080808, August 8th, 2008. And there were, quite a few of us. We'd meet up in crop circles and we'd say, what do you think? Do you think on August 8th there's going to be anything special? Because the previous year, on 070707, that is July 7th, 2007, there had been a spectacular pattern that included the Om symbol in a much larger pattern. And so we wondered, oh, this is 2008. I wonder if there'll be some sort of pattern going on here that represents this special date too, 080808. And indeed there was. I will show you.
Oh my God, look at that.
Can you see the whole pattern?
Yeah, just lift it up a little higher, just a little bit. There we go. Wow. That is amazing.
It's absolutely beautiful and full of nicest energy.
Mm.
So because some of us had been expecting, wouldn't it be nice if a crop circle was made for 080808, representing that number 8, that some people were out there sort of walking around the fields in the middle of the night just to see if they could see anything going on. And friends of mine, English friends, who lived fairly near this field, they were out walking their dog at around 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, still very, very dark, walked by the end of this field, and they looked out into the field and they noticed that there were 2 or 3 red spheres sort of circling around fairly close to the crop, it looked like. And they walked on back home, and next morning walked back again to the field and noticed, those red spheres must have been making this crop circle, because here it is. Beautiful. So it really is a beautiful, beautiful crop circle. I went into it, spent lots of time in it, and it had really wonderful energy and was just done so impeccably, perfectly. A real joy to be in. So when these miracles happen, we consider them miracles. We just feel so blessed that something is looking out for us. And so going back to the idea of fractals, even that 8 really had fractal geometry in it. And then the ultimate of the fractal patterns, in my opinion, is this one.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
And this is called the Catherine wheel.
Oh, wow. Can you just lift it up a little higher, Barbara? There we go.
Thank you. So
That-
this pattern is 409 feet in diameter and had 800 plus separate circles in it. And this particular pattern was made one night when it was very stormy, rainy, windy, and there was a man camping in a tent on the hill. This pattern appeared at the top, on the top of the hill, in a crop that was growing there. And this man was camping somewhat near the top of the hill, but never ventured to open his tent or look out the little window or anything because it was so stormy. But in the morning, the storm died down and he got out of his tent and walked up the rest of the hill and walked over and noticed this huge pattern there. So imagine 409 feet diameter and all of these circles. So it was huge. And he was very careful to notice that there were no muddy footprints anywhere around that crop circle at all. So it could not have been man-made. The only muddy footprints he noticed were the ones that he was making, but there were no other ones there before him. So again, we just felt, wow, this is really an incredible blessing. So by now you probably are getting an idea of why I am enthused about this, and maybe you are becoming enthused about it as well. Then a very significant thing happened in 1996, and that was that there was a man camping overnight, a different man, camping on a hill called Oliver's Castle, because it used to be an ancient hill fort made of the hill, not a building. And down below this hill was a beautiful flat wheat field and nice and ripening, but not yet harvested. And so he was just camping there, just a sleeping bag, no tent. And along about 4 o'clock in the morning, was just beginning to be daylight, and something woke him up. He was not sure what. Opened his eyes, looked down the field, and there was a crop circle being made. So fortunately, he had a video camera with him, grabbed his camcorder, started filming, and this is the pattern that was made that night. And what he saw and filmed was 2 white spheres, balls of light, swooping across the field where that pattern is. And at first there was one ball of light swirling around at ground level, laying down the center circle. And as these 2 other spheres swooped by, they were laying down these spokes coming out from the center circle and a circle at the end of the spokes, just shorter spoke, about halfway, half of what you see here. And those patterns just flew very quickly over that part of the field and then went behind a hedge at the edge of the field. And immediately 2 other spheres, or maybe they themselves, we don't know, came back and flew over that area again. And the extensions of the spokes and the extra little circles, they were laid down. So it was this perfect pattern And all of that, according to the recording, took 7 seconds. 7 seconds to make this perfect crop circle. And this crop circle had wonderful energy. It definitely was a genuine one. So that video has been in great controversy, as you can imagine. And some people said, oh, it's got to have been hoaxed, that the man got out there early and took a picture of the new crop circle and then went back to his studio and dubbed in the orbs. And yet that film, because it was questioned by some, accepted very much by others, that film was subjected to film testing in a number of different English film laboratories and in Hollywood laboratories as well. And each laboratory reported that, no, this was all genuine footage. Those orbs had not been dubbed in. This was really genuine. So that was very excited. And I think that that is the final word on that. Then something really amazing happened. If I can find the picture. In the year 2002. Oh, sorry, it's fallen on the floor. Okay, well, I'll begin by saying that in the year 2001, in Hampshire County, England, one night appeared a square, sorry, a rectangle, excuse me, like a picture frame instead of a round crop circle. It was a rectangle with, filled with a face. Excuse me. Looking like, some people say it looks, or it reminds them of the face on Mars. And other people say, no, that's a human face. To me, it looks like a human face. And laid down with little pixels, little dots of standing crop to make the features of the face. Anyway, we thought that that was really amazing. And then about 10 days later, in the same field, which, by the way, happens to be right next to Britain's largest radio telescope to communicate with the cosmos. So about 10 days later, in the same field, a couple of 100 feet away, there appeared another remarkable crop circle, which was vertical also, like a long vertical. And it seemed to be the answer from space, seems to be the answer to a message that we humans sent out into space, specifically toward the M13 star cluster, which is apparently the nearest one, in 1974. Some of you have heard of Frank Drake, and he did a lot of remarkable work. Carl Sagan, I think, was involved in that too. Anyway, we set out from Arecibo, Puerto Rico, this huge radio telescope that we have there. We sent out a message, looked like a long rectangle with different figures in it, representing human beings, like our mineral component, our chemical component, our DNA, our place in relation to the sun, the third rock out from the sun, and our population, and then our transmission system, which was that big radio telescope. And this glyph that appeared in 2001 in this field in Hampshire County, England, seemed to be a response to that glyph, which we had sent out, and it told about their chemical, their mineral compositions, their DNA, which, by the way, had a third strand. We have the double helix, they had a triple, and their population, their position in relation to their sun, except that they have two sons and were in a different relationship to that. And they're a figure of one of them, which was a short figure with a much bigger head and a smaller body, whereas our figure that we had said in our glyph was a regular human-looking man silhouette, smaller head, larger body. And then it showed a transmission system at the bottom. And that system, whatever it is, it was the exact design of a crop circle that had happened in that very same field a year earlier. So go figure. So that was astonishing enough, 2001. And then in 2002, another very astonishing thing happened in a field in Hampshire County, a different field, same county. And that was this one.
Ah, I remember this one. Yeah.
It's
Oh, yes.
alien head and disc.
Yeah.
So this was really, really striking, really remarkable, kind of like giving us more and more information. So you can see that the alien head looks like what we think of as a typical gray extraterrestrial. It might really, from their point of view, be a different type of extraterrestrial. But I want to talk about the disc, the round thing that he seems to be holding. So this actually has a code in it. And that code is sort of a binary code, an ASCII code. And there are people who know that code. I don't, but I'm relying on others who do. And the code is saying, beware of bearers of false gifts and broken promises. Now you can use your own thought. You think, who are they referring to? Anyway, I'll repeat that again. Beware of the bearers of false gifts and broken promises. There is much pain. We oppose deception. So watch out, you humans. And then it says, but there is still time. Believe there is good out there. Conduit is closing. In other words, the end of that message. So when I first was aware of the translation of that message, I thought, oh, okay, we're being warned about the beings out there, the extraterrestrial beings. But then the more I kind of lived with it and thought about it and talked to other people, that no, I think that they are warning us, about the false gifts, false promises, the deceit that is perpetrated on us by certain factions here on the earth that have a lot of control. And beware of that. That they do not, whoever made these crop circles, they do not go for that. They do not accept that. And they were trying to warn us about things going on here from fellow humans. At least I think that, but you can interpret it any way that you wish to. So a picture that goes along with that is that crop circle was done by a whole different method of laying down the crop. Instead of the swirls, the circles, the laid down flat areas. This was made in a technique called rasterizing, like forming the pattern with laying down straight lines and then leaving the standing lines for contrast. That's how that face was formed. And this is the only crop circle I know of ever that has been done with this particular method. So it might have been made by other intelligences. So I just think that is very, very interesting. And then I want to finish showing slides by showing the crop circle of all the probably 2,000 or so that I went in over the years. I want to show you my favorite one.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
This
You,
is the swallows. And to me, it looks like a flock of birds flying down this way, leaving a trail behind it. And the way that this was positioned in the land, um, it was sort of looked like it was flying down a slope into a mild valley and then up on the next hill toward the large white chalk horse that in olden times had been carved into the hillside. So it had this beautiful swooping motion, and it was so beautifully laid down, everything in it perfect, a wonderful, wonderful energy. Each one of the circles had a different kind of swirled center. It seemed like in the entire formation, every blade of the wheat was laid down perfectly parallel to each other. Just absolutely beautiful, stunning, inspiring, full of energy. And I just laid down in one of the circles. There were quite a few other people in that formation wandering around. And I was having an out of body experience lying down in that one crop circle. And then suddenly, somebody I knew to some extent, an American, came along and said, "Oh, Barbara, hi." And that sort of brought me back into my body and back into conscious awareness. A friend of mine also did some wonderful channeling in the crop circle. And many people later on just reported they had special experiences in that crop circle as well. So that's the end of my pictures. And I'm wondering if there are any questions that anybody has. Nothing is out of bounds for asking.
wow. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I love that. I,
Thank you.
yeah, I'd be, wow, I have so many thoughts. I mean, I'm just curious about why aren't these front news? Like this is amazing. This is really amazing. Why, like, how are they in England when these things happen? It's just, is this just something everybody knows about and so it's no big deal, or do they really believe that these are faked? Or is it, is it that they just don't want to talk about it because it's taboo? Do you know what the feeling is there?
There are a few things involved here. First of all, many of the people I have met in England just don't care. And I don't understand why, but and yet there are many who do care.
Right.
What happened in after the 1990 season when we started having the longer pictograms and even more kind of fancy patterns? Then by September of that year, so basically the crop circle season was pretty much over, except for the corn plants. Anyway, the British government, it wasn't known at first who did this, but across all the newspapers came a big spread with photos of two men named Doug and Dave
Yeah.
who were
Everybody,
in
yeah,
their 70s
yeah,
and
yeah.
not in extraordinarily good shape either. They hang out at the pub every night. And anyway, they was a big promotion in the newspapers all over England and all over the whole world. They sent it out through the United Press or one of those big Reuters or one of those big ones. And it went all over the world, even to small town newspapers here and probably everywhere, as well as the big ones, saying that these two men have conned the world and have made all the crop circles.
Right.
Well, okay, so that's when the hoaxing idea started to come in, 1990. And there was a British researcher, very intelligent man, this George Wingfield, and he traced it back. He just looked up every resource he could get to and really did a sleuthing job and traced it back to that news story having come from the British Ministry of Defense.
Mm.
And that the whole news about this being a hoax, that itself, that news about that was a hoax by the government. So, in other words, the government apparently didn't want people to be all excited about this because for so many people, it pointed to thinking about, well, if these are not made by people, where are they coming from? And people tended to be looking at the sky and thinking about the possibility of other life out there trying to communicate with us, and which is what I think is the case. Um, and they didn't want people knowing about that, just like our country had repressed everything they possibly could about UFOs.
Like our weather balloons, everything is a weather balloon, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So,
Dave
so
and
that
Doug. All right.
so that happened, and then that whole thing about saying that these two men had made the crop circles, that stimulated a lot of other young men to think, oh, well, why don't we try making crop circles? And so it's still to this day, there are young men in England who go out and try to make crop circles. And that's why I emphasize the difference between the man-made ones and the genuine ones.
Yeah.
So, but bit by bit, I think that, the truth, the more accurate idea is coming out about the crop circles. So it may be for the same reason that we don't see them in headlines. Those of us who are involved in crop circles and a new one appears that we think is just absolutely, oh, wow. We think, why isn't this headlines on all the newspapers in the world? But it isn't, it's repressed.
Isn't that something?
So what we have seen in England is that sometimes a small town newspaper out in the country, if they happen to have a crop circle near them and they happen to have somebody go out and take a picture of it, even if it's just a picture from the ground where you can't really accurately see the whole pattern so well, um, that sometimes a small town newspaper will publish an article one day about it, like right after it's been reported, and that's about it. So this wonderful woman whom I stayed with at her bed and breakfast for many of those years, just a lovely, lovely lady, intelligent, just great. And she didn't care. She knew those of us who stayed there were terrifically excited about crop circles. But and she even had my crop circle book there on the table right there so anybody could see it. I mean, she was decent about it, but she didn't want to bother. And summer after summer, my friend and I would ask her, you know, can we take you to a crop circle? We know you have not been in one. And she said, no, no, no. I have laundry to do and dishes and groceries to buy. And no, thank you. And, you know, the next year we'd ask her, will you come with us one of these days that we're here? You know, come and we want to take you. I just want you to just experience it for yourself. And she never did. And finally, one year there was a crop circle that appeared across the street from her B&B, and just a short walk, maybe a 5-10 minute walk away, 10 minutes maybe. And we thought, you know, that ought to be easy and quick for her. So we did take her to see that. And luckily, we didn't have to climb over too much of a fence as we often do to get into the field. But we got in fairly easily in a little gap in the fence. And she said, well, this is sort of what I thought it would be like. Okay, thank you. She wasn't especially impressive. Beautiful little crop circle, that one that looked like a goddess
Mm.
shape with her arms up around. It's really very pretty. And that was just enough for her.
Mhm.
I guess she'd been just so conditioned.
Right.
And all of those years, I mean, I must have stayed with her for 16 years or more. Yeah, probably more than that, maybe 18, 19 years. And so every year she'd know that I and any friends with me were just so excited and so enthused about every new, oh, there's a new one over at such and such a place. And let's go right after breakfast. And, you know, but still, she'd been so indoctrinated by the British press that she just thought it's no big deal.
Right.
Yeah. And yet, some of the very best researchers in the world are English.
Mhm.
So it just depends. I mean, either you do respond to it or you don't,
Can I,
or
can I
you don't
Can I just
care.
ask you a question? You said your favorite one was the last one that you showed with the swallows.
Right?
And so what was it about that crop circle that made it your favorite? Because I mean, they're all so amazing. I'm curious, was it because you were having those out of body experiences, or was it the energy that you felt there, or was it yeah, it was.
First of, first of all, when we came to it, all we knew that it was reported that there was a new crop circle in that location. We had to walk up the side of a hill from the road. And when we came to the top of the hill, oh, we saw this pattern. Looked like it was, as I said, looked like birds flying down the hill and up the other hill. I mean, it was just beautiful. It looked like it was in motion and heading right up, pointing right to that beautiful white chalk horse, which had been carved a couple of centuries ago in that hill in England. And so it was just like, oh, wow. I mean, it didn't seem static
Mm.
like all the other ones. It seemed that it was in beautiful, swooping motion. So that was the first thing. And then the way that every single blade in the whole crop circle and all the little crop circles were laid down so precisely, so perfectly, and a really nice feeling of energy. And in the smaller circles there, wherever they had been spiraled around, there really was sort of an accumulation of nice energy that you could just really feel. And so it, and the whole setting was so beautiful. So one hill coming down, and then the other hill coming up, and this beautiful pattern swooping.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, it just very, very happy. I've loved so many of them, but this one just really touched my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Were you able to take pictures inside the crop circle of the center and how each one was different and how the props were laid? Yeah.
In fact, I've taken thousands of pictures, and just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, all of those pictures, which had gone through and labeled as to date and place, they all were taken by Daniel Sheehan, wonderful lawyer, to be put in my archive, the Romero.
I'm
What's
s-
that?
Go ahead, Barbara.
Oh,
That's somebody was
thought.
unmuted. Go ahead.
So anyway, all of the pictures, it's lucky that I kept behind these that I was able to show you,
Mhm.
and they'll pick up some more another time whenever I'm totally through uh, needing any pictures or anything. I'll give them the rest. But anyway, I had few thousand more pictures
Wow.
that I could have shown you.
Wow, I'm so happy you have the ones that you have, and I can't wait till I can, we can look those up, and Daniel Sheehan's going to put them somewhere where people can see them. Will people be able to see them online one day? Is that what's going to happen?
Well, sure, I think they're going to digitize everything. I'm not sure about that, but they do want these pictures and all of my files for people I have regressed,
Mhm.
extraterrestrial encounters, a couple of thousand of those at least, or maybe 3,000. Um, that's all going to be there too, with the identity of each person eliminated.
Mm.
So the material remains private for those people. But we figured that in the future, as time goes on, that there will be some people who will want to know more about this phenomenon that all of you experience. And so here's a good record of that from the regressions to those extraterrestrial experiences.
Mhm.
So that might be something that someone, maybe more than one someone, might want to research someday to learn more about the phenomenon. And I think especially as disclosure of the UFO phenomenon is happening more and more, we need to do a lot further with that, but um, that more and more people are given the chance anyway to take this seriously. Ah, there really are beings. They really do come. They really do visit people. Some people do, many people do have direct experiences with them. And so there probably will be more and more researchers just wanting to know as much as they can about this. And these records that I have from the regressions from people's encounters, will be very interesting information for them.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's important work that you've done over your lifetime. And so I think it's wonderful that it's going to be preserved in that way. All
Yeah.
right.
Any questions from
Yeah.
any people?
Before we start with the questions, I am going to just ask you one more time because I didn't have it recorded before. Do you want to talk about your book, the name of it, the Crop Circle book, and then also the new book that's coming out? And then we'll open it up for questions from the Zoom room.
So the Crop Circle book is this one,
Very nice.
Crop Circles Revealed. And the subtitle is Language of the Light Symbols. So I co-authored this book with a wonderful woman named Judith Moore. And Judith Moore was and is a channel of an 11th dimensional being. So I have written the first half of this book, which is basically all you could ever want to know about crop circles. And she has written the second half, which is channeled information on 67 different pictures of crop circles that we gave her. And so it's a view of the crop circle phenomenon from the earthly point of view, that's my point of view, and the other dimensional point of view, which is her point of view. So this book can be ordered, as my other books too, on my website, which is Barbara.Lamb.Regression.com, Barbara.Lamb.Regression.com. And if you scroll through on that, you come to a page where it shows this book and 3 other books that I have done, and they can be ordered very easily on that website through paying through PayPal. So when PayPal gets an order for the book, which you have ordered, they send me a notice and I wrap up the book. I put a little message and a signature in the book and send it out. That's a nice way to do it. You get the signature right from the author, or at least one of the authors. And that's true for the other books as well. So then, thank you for inviting me to mention the new book, which I have co-authored with a different person, Sheila Seppi, who has formed the Galactic Alliance group and the Conscious Awakening Network group. And we got together and wrote this book called Cosmic Convergence. And Cosmic Convergence is about walk-ins and hybrids, ET human hybrids, and star seeds. So she herself, Sheila Seppi, is a walk-in and certainly has very, very interesting information about that phenomenon. And I have worked with a few people who are walk-ins, and then she is not a hybrid, but I have worked with many people who are ET human hybrids living here with us, living as regular people, just with more exceptional abilities than most of us humans have. And then the star seeds are people who are here. They may have no genetics necessarily from extraterrestrial beings like the hybrid people have, but they're connected with them. And in all cases, they are here to really serve humanity, to help raise the consciousness and the spiritual awareness of humanity. So they're all really good people here for very, very benevolent purposes. And if you met any of these people, walk-ins, hybrids, or starseeds, you would definitely think, oh, that's just a regular, lovely person, male or female. We have both genders involved in this. And, you wouldn't think anything different of them. They don't look like typical aliens or anything like that, any of them. They certainly look like regular humans. And they are regular humans, except that they do have considerable enhancement. So all of the walk-ins that I know, Sheila being one of them, they are very much about bringing good information to people and really enlarging what we're aware of, including extraterrestrials and other dimensions, other dimensional beings. And it's very enlightening. So reading about them is interesting. My particular part in the book is writing about 5 or 6 separate cases, people I have worked with in each of those categories. Some regressions I've done with people who are walk-ins, some regressions I've done with people who are ET human hybrids, and some regressions I have done with people who are starseeds. So we've got the theoretical and the very practical, real life testimonies from people.
Very
So I
nice.
think it's an interesting combination.
Yeah. And that's coming out when? When did you say?
It's at the publisher right now, and they say it will be out in October.
Oh,
And when that is out, that will be available on my website also, Barbara.Lamb.Regression.com. Right.
and
So,
you'll be here in November to talk about it more in depth too, right?
yeah, right. Yes, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think November or December, forget. I think in December I have you down for. So
Oh, okay.
that'll
Never
be that'll be fantastic. I
do the
can't.
read.
All right,
Yeah.
so I know we have some questions. So I'm gonna bring Susie in. Susie's gonna ask her question. Hold on a minute. Come on in, Susie.
Hi.
Hello.
I was just like full body chills so many times.
Oh,
It's
yay.
just I love them. I mean, full body ex for an extended period of time. So I have a few questions. It was just wonderful and thank you so much. So one of them is, well, the thing about the codes is just, you know, that was incredible. And then like, what do the farmers say? Have you ever talked to any of the farmers, or does it happen in the same field, or do they believe it? This little B&B lady is very funny. And
Oh,
have there been any recently, like in what's happening? And then I put it in the chat. I had listened to a Humanity Rising, a British guy who's really into crop circles, and they said he'd made some. I'm not really sure. Kalen Rain, do you know him?
I don't.
Huh. Okay. Anyway, I put it in the chat. It's an hour talk on Humanity Rising, and he was the one that mentioned because there was so much water underneath. And
Yeah.
in some ways, he sort of acted like it was the water and it wasn't anything else. And I thought, I don't think so. So those are my questions. But the farmers, and how come we haven't seen anything recently?
Well, there are crop circles that are still happening in
Okay.
England. Yeah. Um, if you want to see what's happening currently, you could look at the website called cropcircleconnector.com.
All right.
Repeat that, cropcircleconnector.com. And
Got
they will show this year's crop circles. So they're probably finished by now because we're into September, unless there happens to be a corn crop circle coming along before the end of the month. But most of the wheat and barley, oilseed canola fields have all been harvested by now. If this is a typical year, and I think it certainly is. Okay, gosh, you asked a few questions. Could you go back and ask?
You pretty much didn't know, Kate, what did the farmers say?
The farmer?
Have
Oh,
you
yeah.
talked to any of the farmers whose fields it was?
Well, farmers vary a lot in their response about having a crop circle appear in their field. Some of them are okay with it, and they allow anybody to come into their field and spend time as much as they want in the crop circles. So thank goodness for those. Some of them are vehemently against it, and they're convinced that these crop circles are made by vandals, by
And
young.
also, what about their income? I mean, does that, then what happens to their income? So I could see, these days, it's all about money.
Yes, well, that's good thought on your part. The crops that have been laid down in a crop circle are fine. In fact, even better than the others, but
They can come up.
they cannot be harvested because the harvesting machines come along and cut off the standing stalks, but they cannot get under
Right.
the stalks. So,
Right.
so basically, the farmers lose that amount of crop that's been laid down in the crop circle. They lose that. They can't pick it up and sell it. Or if they tried to do it by hand, it would be really, really labor intensive. So they do lose income. And that's one reason why some of the farmers allow people to come onto their land to visit the crop circle. And they ask for a donation of like 2 or 3 pounds. That would be like $3 to $5 or so that you pay as you go into the field. Sometimes they'll have a little metal box, like a bank with a slit in it to put your donation in. Or sometimes they'll have a person posted by the field, especially when it's a brand new crop circle. If they can find somebody who'll stand there all day to take the donations. They
Yeah.
just wears out after a day or so. And that's why they post a little box there on the fence instead, or the gate. And so some of them are really okay with you coming in the crop, and they don't do anything to disturb that crop circle. But the ones who do not want them in the field and don't want anybody in their field, they will go out as soon in the morning that they're aware that there's a new crop circle. They'll go out and mow down the standing pattern
Everything.
in people. So it just looks like a mess. But even then, I have found that if I can get into a field where that's happened, where they've been mowed down, you see the end. If it's a real crop circle, the energy is still there, and you can go and feel it and measure it, and you can see, even with the mowing down having happened, you can pretty much see the pattern of the crop circle. So they're interesting to visit too, except that in those cases, the farmer definitely doesn't want you there. So, we try to respect the wishes of the farmer. Fortunately, there are enough of them and enough good ones, good, wonderful pets
Yeah.
that we are allowed to go into or pay to go into, which means we're being allowed to. So farmers vary a whole lot. There was a farmer in Wiltshire County, England, who in one year in the early 1990s, oh, he didn't want anybody in his field, and he'd stand somebody out there on guard. And then one afternoon, a friend and I, American friend, uh, noticed him there by his field and decided to see if we could talk to him and convince him to allow crop circles. So we did. We spent probably a couple hours talking to him about how special this is. And he had never heard anything special about them. He just assumed they were done by vandals from the local pub. And anyway, we apparently convinced him. And from then on, he didn't do anything to restrict people. And the next year, he had brought, when he had a crop circle, he had 3 fields right near each other. And when he had a crop circle in one of those fields, he put a big piece of metal, heavy metal farm equipment. And then on the top, he had soldered a little metal box with a slit in it, for contributions, and a little sign there, please contribute. And then the next year, he was there sometimes taking donations, sometimes not. And then finally, after a few years, he just allowed anybody to just come there, not expecting any payment or anything. So in other words, we'd sort of converted him. And
But did he have continuous crop circles each year?
yes, in one of those fields each year he did. Oh yeah, he had great fields, wonderful fields,
Yeah.
the right conditions apparently. Yeah.
Okay, one other, not to, because I know somebody else wants to ask, but the Japanese situation was incredible. And it just proves so much. But there was a woman that wrote, coincidence does not mean causality. Did you see that in the chat?
No, I wasn't looking at the
Yeah,
chat.
Catherine, coincidence does not mean causality. And I thought, well, let's see, they meditated, they wanted it, and then it happened.
Right.
I'm not a physicist, but
Well, you could say that's coincidence. You could say it's synchronicity. Uh, you can think any way that you want to think about it, but it happens so many times that I personally know of that people would ask for a particular pattern and that very night it would be supplied. So it just seems to me that that's way more than coincidence.
Yeah.
Even
And
more.
Barbara, I want to
This is-
just ask you, is
Thank
there
you.
still the Center for Crop Circle Studies in England? So are there people studying this phenomena in England?
Well, I'm sure there still are people. I don't know if that particular group is still going. For a while in the early 1990s, we had in Los Angeles, California, we had a Center for Crop Circle Studies group. And they heard me lecturing someplace and said, oh, you've got to be part of our group. So I was for several years. I don't even know if they are still continuing. I should look it up on the website sometime, Center for Crop Circle Studies.
Yeah, I'll check it out on Google after this and see if they're still around.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna bring Karen in. I know she has a question. Thank you so much, Susie.
Yes, thank you. Good questions.
All right, Karen, let me bring you in. Okay, come on in. There we go. Okay. Can you unmute?
I hear you.
Oh, you hear me?
I do.
Now we
Oh,
hear.
okay. Right, good. I guess I was curious about a number of things. Has there ever been, well, you kind of asked that, Catherine, already, whether there was an official like clearinghouse for crop circles in America, and whether there were more in America than England. I mean, we have more land here, but we don't evidently have ideal conditions, and evidently they do it wherever they feel that the condition is ideal for it on that field. They don't even ask the farmer in any way. They just do it where it's appropriate. So I'm curious to whether,
We do have a lot happening in America, crop circles happening in America. And you're right. I mean, we're a much, much bigger country. We don't have as many here as they do in England, the smaller country. But like we've had them in Washington State, Oregon, California, Northern California, and even Southern California. And we've had them in all of the states going along the upper border, the Canadian border of the US, and certainly in the big wheat growing states like Kansas and Nebraska and Oklahoma and so forth. And even some on the eastern seaboard, New Hampshire, New York State, on down the eastern coast, and Tennessee has had at least one that I know of, Kentucky, and Ohio has had quite a few because of the ancient mounds there, like where the Serpent Mound is in Ohio. There have been over the years at least a few crop circles that have happened, and they're not necessarily in big, tall, thin crops like wheat or barley or oats. They're sometimes in smaller plants like soy, which are only about maybe 3 or 4 inches high, and may or may not have blossoms on them, but still there have been some crop circles that have happened in those. But just like with uh, the news media don't do a whole lot with that. Maybe there are reports in those local areas in the US like they are in England, but certainly doesn't seem to meet the national news. So
no.
I am wondering personally, just a question I have, as the disclosure of the UFO phenomenon continues, hopefully it will be continuing, as more and more people are aware of that, maybe more and more crop circle reports will be happening.
Yeah, I lived in Fresno for a while myself, and I wasn't involved in farming or anything, but I didn't hear of many there, and I lived there for quite a few years, but my parents had to move there because my dad's job changed, and we were, we were from the Bay Area. We were from Los Altos, and we had moved to Fresno, and it was hot. I hated the heat, so I went away during the hottest part of the year. But I always thought it's weird that I don't hear of a lot of crop circles here, because I thought, it is a farming area and stuff. You would think that there were, and I don't recall hearing a lot about them in the papers or whatever. Maybe I wasn't there at the right time of year or whatever, but it just didn't seem like there was a lot of publicity about them.
Yeah, maybe they just weren't reported.
That could very well be, because people in Fresno at that time were very conservative. They didn't want any nonsense going on about their lives, basically. You couldn't
Yeah,
you couldn't talk to them about a lot of things. And yet some of them were totally open. But it just didn't come to the fore the way it has about England and stuff. So I
I
just
think
wondered about that.
there
And
have been.
I wanted to ask also if you're still doing regressions, if you're still doing life regressions or not.
I'm still doing regressions, and I'm doing some in person in San Diego, where I am.
Wow.
I also do a lot of
Oh,
them
you're
online,
you're
on
in
this,
San Diego. Okay.
just like this, Zoom,
Yeah.
Skype, WhatsApp, FaceTime, StreamYard, Google. I've forgotten what the Google thing is. There's a Google program too. Forgotten the name of that. Anyway, they work very well. I probably do at least half of them online.
I was wondering whether, yeah, you did that. That's like, you can get it on your website, I imagine, or not, what happens with that?
Oh, yeah, through the website, there's the option for basically sending me a message, and that comes through to my email, and then I answer the email.
Okay.
That's how many of them occur, coming through that way, which is just great that we have the technology to do this, because so many people are way across the country from me, or they're in other countries. I've done regressions with people in many other countries.
Yeah.
So we just have to figure out the time difference.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm not a techie person. I have to admit that right now, and everybody here knows it because they find that I have problems getting in and stuff like that. I guess maybe I'm like PMH Atwater and computers don't like me or something, but I have trouble getting in sometimes. But
Yeah.
today was very good. I have to say I compliment you on having little tickets for it, and it worked. Finally, I did it twice, but it worked. So thank you.
Good. I'm glad you got on. I'm
Yeah.
I'm low tech as well, so I
Uh,
appreciate any difficulty that you have.
yeah.
But as long as you could do something like uh, connect with Skype, have you ever made it?
I don't think I've tried Skype. I've tried Google and stuff, and even if I make a number with them, ostensibly a passcode or whatever, the next time I'm there, they say, "Oh, this is invalid," and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, they have to have some kind of way of keeping them. I think it's because I don't use those a lot. I don't go on them every minute, and I have heard a rumor that they cut them off after 6 months if you don't use your password on all these sites. They
Oh,
cut it out, and then you're invalid the next time you go there. And I'm like, what is this? They what did they do with the number? you know.
I
So
get
I don't, you know,
frustrated too. I
yeah.
relate.
Aaron, I
Uh,
want to give other people a chance if they
yeah,
have
yeah,
any
sure. Go
questions.
ahead.
All right. All right. Thanks, Karen. Okay. So does anybody else have any questions? All right. I don't see any hands.
It's okay.
All right.
I have one more question.
There's one more
Is there,
question. All right, Karen, one more
is
question.
there, oh, thank you. Is there any place you can send experiences to that connects with your site or not?
Say that again, Karen. That's not making sense. I'm sorry.
Okay, I mean, is there any place you can send experiences to that are relevant with aliens and things like that on your site, or do you just take crop circle things?
Oh, so in other words, Barbara, she wants to know if there are experiences that people are having, can they contact you and you can put them on your site somewhere?
Or not on the site, but in a personal interview or whatever.
Yeah, if you go to the website, um, and you scroll down a bit, you get to where you can leave a message. I think it'll be, I've forgotten just how that appears now. I haven't looked for a while, but you can just type in a message like you would type in an email, and that will be forwarded to my email, and I will get back. Or a quicker way. Do you have a cell phone?
Yeah, I do. It's not working all that well, but I do have one.
Oh, dear. Okay, because even if you send me an email, my response will include that from here on, I would like to be text messaged. If you could send me a text, I'll give you my phone number. And if you send a text message saying that you would like a session, and that it would have to be online. You're probably not in California, right?
Oh no, I'm still in San Francisco.
Oh, you're San Francisco. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're
Not
the time zone.
relatively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have to come all the way down here physically to San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah. So the best thing would be the quickest thing would be to text me, and my number, do you have something to write
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
Okay, 909 518 3438. So that's my phone and cell phone. I'll get a text message and just say your name in the text, and that you talk to me on this program,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that you'd like a regression, and give a general time frame. I always start my regressions at 3:00 p.m. Pacific time,
Okay.
and the sessions go usually at least 3 hours, sometimes as much as 4 hours.
That sounds good.
Yeah, and the fee is $300 for that session.
Well, I'll have to save up for that, but I'll do that.
Okay. And yeah, it's a good, thorough session. We discuss whatever is going on for you that you are interested in knowing about, and choose what you want to revisit in the regression.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it takes
Right.
a while. It's good. It's good. People report that it seems very complete
Uh-huh.
and
Well,
helpful.
because I've had a couple that didn't seem like complete, so I'd rather have
Okay.
reliability. You know what I mean?
All right.
So
All
thank
right.
you.
So now you have all that information, so you're good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Brian because Brian has had his hand up. Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Come on in, Brian.
Hi, thanks Barbara for sharing all that information. It's fascinating. I
Welcome.
was just recently at the beach, and like when I travel somewhere, I'm always tempted to like take a little jar of sand home or seashells. Do you have a jar of grain?
Oh, I used to. I used to bring home samples, especially from the genuine crop circles, not just any old field. But oh, they've gotten lost in the shuffle. Sometimes I moved a few years ago, and oh, yeah, a lot of stuff got thrown out by my daughters who were helping me to discard stuff. Yeah,
Sure.
I don't right now have any, but
I was just thinking like a little dream pillow or something, right? You put them all in a little, a little, because like you said, it had energy in the circle, so I don't know if it had the energy in the grain when you bring it home. So that was all.
yeah, I do. You know what? And you're raising a good point. There have been some testings of the grains, not only to see if they're genuine or hoaxed, but also they've been tested in terms of nutrition. And there was a while in the 1990s when people were actually going into crop circles, one group of people that I know of, and they'd actually get down and pick up the plants and cut them and take them and make bread and muffins and so forth with them. And they claimed that those products that they made from the crop circle plants were much more nourishing. I don't know if they were able to really establish that, but that's certainly what their claims were. And what many of us have suspected too, that they would be more nourishing. Or people were even taking crop circle plants and making beer and saying, oh, it's the most wonderful beer you could imagine. So I never tasted any of it. I don't know myself, but yeah. So anyway, I appreciate, and I too am one who taken beautiful little rolled stones and from the ocean and shells and so forth over the years. And I think that when I moved, my collections of those things just simply got discarded because I moved to a much smaller place. Just couldn't have it. But I appreciate your doing that.
it's our, I guess it was my frugal ways, right? It was the way I could get a souvenir as a kid. I think I learned when we went places, you could take a stone home with you, right? I don't know, but just having the seeds, I think, would be fascinating like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I took home a couple of little stones from the Great Pyramid in Egypt. And just for years, it's, oh, this is so special to have this with me. Just a little one that had just crumbled off one of the bigger blocks, you know. And yeah, I've done a lot of that. I appreciate your doing that.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Okay. All right. So last call for question. All right. So I think we're going to say good night because we've been on for about 2 hours. And I just want to say thank you so much, Barbara. This has been wonderful.
Oh,
Yeah, I love, I'm like, I love crop circles. Anytime I see them on Facebook, I usually see pictures of them and stuff on Facebook, but I just get so happy when I see them. So this is re-energizing me for looking more into it and discovering more about it. And wow, you've done so much with that over the years. Do you still go to the crop circles, or is that something you stopped doing?
I haven't gone just recently because my walking ability is not so great.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I would. But you
Yeah.
have to do a lot of walking,
Okay.
you know, a lot of driving around to find a crop circle, but walking, usually it's quite a long walk through a field to even get to the crop circle. And sometimes up a hill or down a steep hill, or sometimes over a fence or over a gate
Right,
or
right.
between barbed wire. So I did so much of that,
Yeah.
just have not recently just been able to.
Wow. So
But
just one more quick question. So when you go there and you're there to specifically see these crop circles, is there some kind of a network that's there that you tap into that flies around and looks for these crop circles? And that's how you get word where they are? Because I
yeah,
can imagine that you're just driving all over England looking for that. All right. So there are people that are in place that you know of that you can ask and they send word out to the people that are there for that reason.
yes. Um, there are a couple of people, or maybe a few, depending on the year, who are crop circle enthusiasts, and they will get up early in the morning and hire a helicopter or a small airplane and just simply fly over the fields looking. And I believe that's still going on. And then they will report to the crop circle connector people. And if they're taking photos, which they usually do, or even video, they'll post that too. Technologically, I don't know how they do that, but they know how.
Okay.
Fortunately. And so that if you're there looking for crop circles and you have a little computer or cell phone or tablet or something, you can look at the crop circle connector and see if there's a new one that day and what the location is. Now, location is usually given as the town name that they're closest to, that the field is closest to. Sometimes, if we're lucky, they'll put the Ordnance Survey map number on. And we all buy Ordnance Survey maps when we're there of the whole countryside, which has every little railroad, every little public footpath. You can see where the fields are, every little town, every little village, where the sacred sites are. Often crop circles happen near sacred ancient megalithic stone sites. So since the early 90s, 1990s, we've had that reference because the crop circle connector got set up in about 1993, I think. Before that, you just sort of luck of the draw. If you just maybe find your way to one crop circle and then meet a couple people in it and ask if they know where any others are. That's how I started out doing it, just word of mouth like that.
Wow.
But so it's a lot easier now. And now it's much easier because people can find out from the crop circle connector, and then they can go by GPS. They type in the town name, or if the report has the ordnance survey map number on it, which actually shows the field.
Right.
And so it's a lot more efficient and easy now than in the days when I started out doing this.
Wow. And then one more question. Is it pretty much a daily event there, or are there long periods of time where it doesn't happen?
Well, starting in May, there might be 2 or 3. I'm going by England now.
Right.
2 or 3 that happen, and then maybe a little bit more in June, more in July, more in August, up to the middle of August. So, in the middle of the season, let's say in July, you might have one, and there might be one another day in a different location, or there might be nothing reported for about 2 or 3 days, and then there'll be another one, or there'll be 2 reported in one morning. And so it's sort of irregular,
Yeah.
and of course, you never know where they're going to appear. But
Okay.
there are certain fields that seem to receive a crop circle almost every year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Barbara, again, for being here. This was so wonderful, and I can't wait till December when you come back and you're going to talk more about your new book that's coming out. And I appreciate everybody that's been here tonight, and I appreciate all of your questions. And I thank all of you. The next meeting we'll have is Spiritual Experiencers, and that will be on the 3rd Tuesday of the month. So I'll send everybody out an email for that. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the week. Many blessings. I hope to see you all soon.
To you all.
So wow, I'm so excited about it.
Aw,
Oh,
thanks.
crops.
Yeah. Glad you were
You
here,
have
Jen.
a calendar, you know. Okay.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yay. I'm waiting for you to click off.
Good night.